So in the previous class, we have seen how we can read data and writing data into Excel sheet. And by using the technique, we'll see how we can do data-driven testing. So first thing, what is data-driven testing? So we'll prepare test data in our Excel sheet and we read the test data. And once you read the data, we use the same data for testing purpose. Means we can pass the same data to the application and do some validations. And then sometimes we can results back into the same Excel, sometimes we may not. So basically the data driven testing is about using test data. So we can prepare test data in Excel sheets and read the data, use it for automation testing. And you may have n number of rows in Excel, n number of columns in Excel, but all the data we are going to use as part of data driven testing. Okay, so to perform data driven testing, so if you take any data driven test case, any data driven test case, you may have multiple data driven test cases in automation, right? So in every data driven test case, Excel operations are common. Like for example, opening an Excel file and reading counting number of rows, counting number of columns, and reading data, writing data. So these are all common operations we have to do for every data driven test case. Okay. So here there is a big challenge in this. Let me explain. Okay. Now, if I take any test case, suppose if you take data-driven test case. So if you take data-driven test case, which contains the two parts. The first part is what? Application code. Means we have to interact with the elements. We have to launch our browser, interact with the elements, do validations. All those things comes under application code. The second part is what? Excel related code. Means opening Excel, finding the number of columns, reading, writing data, all these things comes under the second part. So if you take any data-driven test case, it should contain both. First, we need to write some piece of code for application side. Another thing is we need to write some piece of code for Excel related operations. Okay, for every test case, if I take another test case, again, same thing. Some piece of code we have to write for automation, for application. Another one is a Excel related code. So like this, we have a 10 test cases or 20 test cases. In every test case, we have to create Excel related operations. Excel related code we have to create. So, but this is a common. So any data driven test case, opening Excel, counting the rows, counting the columns, reading data, writing data. These operations are commonly we do for every data-driven test case. So instead of writing the same code in every data-driven test case, what is the problem in this? Two problems. One is your test case will become very complex because which includes application related code along with Excel code. Test case becomes very complex. That is one major problem. Second problem is this Excel related code is repeating in every test case. Multiple test cases, we are writing the same code multiple times. And that is again duplication. These are the two major problems we have. So to solve these two problems, what we can do is whatever operations we do on Excel, common operations, we will create a separate file. We call it as a utility file. The file name can be anything. So it's simply a utility file. So what this file contains is whatever common operations we do in Excel, for those common operations, we will create a different user-defined methods. For example, I want to find number of rows in Excel. So I'll create one method called getRowCount, one user-defined method. We will pass required parameters like Excel file path. Okay, where what is the sheet name? Okay, like that. So it will return the number of rows in Excel. Similarly, I'll create one more method, get cell count. And we will pass required parameters and this will return the number of cells in a particular row. Similarly, we can write read data method. So we'll pass required parameters and it will read the data from the particular cell. Similarly, we'll write another method called write data and we'll pass required parameters and this method will write data into the Excel. So like this, we will create different user-defined methods in the utility file. And in every data-driven test case, we no need to write the Excel-related code. Just application code we will write. And whenever you want to read data, write data, or finding the number of rows, finding the number of cells, if you want to do those type of operations, we will just call these methods into the every test case. Same utility file we will refer in every test case. So in this particular approach, two advantages. One is we no need to write a Excel code in every test case. So the complexity is reduced. Second thing is what? Reusability we achieved. So we no need to write Excel code in every test case. Just we have created one utility file. It is also a separate class, Java class, which contains these user-defined methods. And we will call these methods in every test case. So this is the approach we follow when you do data-driven test case. All common methods will be stored in this common class. Yes, that's the reason we call it as a utility file. Utility file is nothing but a reusable. It is always reusability. To achieve the reusability, we always create a utility files, which contains all the methods, and we will call them wherever we need. So we no need to write this particular Excel related code. In the last class, for reading Excel, we have created some program, and for writing Excel, we create another code. So we no need to write those scripts in every test case, not at all needed. We just create one utility file which contains the user defined methods. And whenever you need get row count, suppose you want to find number of rows in Excel, just call this method. And whenever you want to find cell count, you can call this method. Same reading data, writing data, like that. This is the utility file we can use in every data driven test case. So this is the approach we have to follow. Now, let me show you how exactly utility file will be created, how it looks like. Let me clear. Okay, so go to Eclipse and I'll create new package day 41. Okay, so in this, I'm going to create new class. Okay, I'll name it as, you can give any name, but I'm just giving some relevant name, Excel utils, Excel utils. And don't take any main method because we are not going to run this class. This class contains only user defined methods, and all of them I'll create as a static method so that we can access those methods directly by using class name itself. We no need to create any object. So just finish. Okay, so in this, we have to create all user defined methods to perform different operations on Excel sheet. So I already have this utility file. Let me have all these methods in this. So then we will go through one by one. So I'm just copying this. Okay. All right. So first of all, we need to import required classes. Java.io. So workbook, worksheet, all required packages we need to import. Right. So this is a utility file which we created. So let me go through what exactly it is, what it contains. So for every Excel related operations, we need some variables, right? So we need to file input stream variable we required, because instead of creating these variables multiple times in multiple methods, we created just only once as a static variables. Now I'm going to refer these in every method wherever it is required. So why I'm creating only once here? Because we need these variables in every method. So instead of creating these variables multiple times in multiple methods, I just created only one time, make them as a static so that we can refer the same variables in every method. So file input stream we required for reading, opening the file for reading purpose, and file output stream is required for opening file for writing purpose. Workbook, XSS sheet, XSS row, XSS cell, cell style. So cell style is also another class which is there. So through this, we can apply some kind of a styles on cells. For example, I can make cell as a red color. I can make cell as a green color. Sometimes when you update your test case results passed or failed, I can also apply some styles on the cell. For that, we can use cell style. So these are the classes we are going to use. Now come to the first method. If I look at this, the method name is getRowCount, and the name itself is saying when I call this method, it will return the row count. How many rows are there in Excel sheet? And what are the parameters it is taking? String Excel file. That means Excel file path we have to pass. Where exactly Excel file path, and sheet name also we need to pass. So one is Excel file path. Second parameter is a sheet name in that Excel, because there are multiple sheets are there in Excel sheet. We have to provide a sheet name. So when you pass these two parameters, this will do everything, and finally it will return the row count. And what this method is doing, it is opening file in input mode, reading mode, getting the workbook, getting the sheet, finding the last row number that is exactly equal to row count. Then workbook is closing, file is closing, and returning the row count. In the last class, we have done the same thing, right? At the time of reading the data, counting the number of rows and everything. So now we put everything in the user defined method. So when you call this method by passing parameters like file path and sheet name, this will just return the row count. So execution and everything, this will take care. And return type is integer because row count will be integer, and I'm making as a static and public. Why? Because this utility class methods I can access everywhere in your project. And moreover, this is static method. Static method means what? We don't need to create any object for Excel utils class to access these methods. So directly we can access this method by using a class name itself. So for that reason, I make them as a static. So this is one method. When I call getRowCount, it will return the row count. Now similarly, getCellCount. Suppose I want to find number of cells. So then we have to pass three parameters: Excel file path, sheet name, and row number also we need to pass. Because if you want to find cells, number of cells, we need a row. In that particular row, it will find number of cells. So we need to additionally pass row number also. Excel file, path, and sheet name, and then on which row you want to find number of cells. So that row number we have to pass as another parameter. So by taking these three parameters, it will perform. So it will open the file in the reading mode, open the workbook, okay, and getting the sheet, whatever sheet we are passing here, the same sheet it will open, and whichever row number we have passed, it will get the same row number, and finding the cells, and workbook is closed, file is closed, and cell count will be returned. And these are all just a variable. Fi is representing file, WB is representing workbook, WS is representing worksheet. Okay, these are the just a variable names. Okay, this is get cell count. Just we call this method, it will return number of cells in that particular row. And we no need to write this much of code in every data-driven test case. That is an advantage. Just we are calling one method by passing parameters. This will return the row count. That's it. Now get cell data. So suppose if you have some data in the cell, now I want to read the data from the particular cell. Okay, then we will pass Excel file path, sheet name, in which row and which column. Column in the sense and which cell number. So 4 parameters we have to pass. Excel file path we need to pass, sheet name, row number, cell number. So when you pass these 4 parameters, it will read data from that particular cell or column. And it is doing the same thing. Open the file in the file input stream because it is a reading. Open the workbook, getting the worksheet, getting the particular row based upon the row number we passed, and also getting the cell based upon the cell number we passed. And from this particular cell, we want to read the data. Okay. So here we need to understand something. If you want to read the data from the cell, we use one method called toString method, data.cell.toString method. So toString method will read the data from the cell. So whatever data we have in the cell, all kinds of data will be read by the toString method. Okay, we can use this method directly, data equal to cell.toString. And Apache POI is provided a special class called data formatter. In this, we have one method called format cell value. First, we need to create an object of data format. This is optional. Instead of doing this, you can also use toString method, nothing wrong in that. Okay, so another way is Apache POI, this toString method is there. Apart from this, we have another method this. So data formatter object, we need to first create. Data formatter equal to new formatter. From this object, we call one method called format cell value, and we have to pass a cell object directly. And this will also return the data from the cell. Okay, what is the specialty of this method is, this method especially returns the formatted value of a cell as a string regardless of the cell type. That means in Excel sheet is also there are different cell types like numeric cell, text cell, date cell. So if I go back to the Excel and see every cell is having a different type. Let me open this. Suppose if you right click and format, so you can see different type of cells. You can see number type cell, currency type cell, accounting, date, time, percentage, fraction, scientific. There are different type of cells are there. So whatever cell it could be, it doesn't matter. The formatter method will return the value in the string format, just like a toString method. So whatever the data we have in Excel, it can be time, it can be text, it can be currency, whatever it is. So returns a formatted value of a cell as a string regardless of the cell type. So cell type can be anything, but ultimately it will return the cell data in the string format only. So both are doing the same job. Either you can use this one or you can use this one. Okay. And this is the additional method which is provided by Apache POI. Fine. So why we need to put this in the try catch block? And if you don't put this in the try catch block, then what happens? So at the time of reading the data from the cell, either using toString, can we use toString in place of, yes, that's the reason I'm saying you can use this one or use this one. Two options are there. You can use toString still, no problem in that, or you can use data format. Both you cannot use, only one approach you can follow. That's the reason I have just commented toString, because we already know this earlier in the last class we see. So this is a new thing I am just introducing. Okay. Suppose tomorrow, if you see somewhere else, you should not be confused. What is this data formatter? Why they have used this for reading the data? You should not be confused. So that's the reason I'm just showing all the ways. You can still use the toString method or you can use the data formatter approach. Anything is fine. Both are doing the same job. Okay. There is no extra advantage. Both are doing the same thing. Both are reading the data in string format. So it can be any type of cell. ToString method will finally get the data in the string format. Even this also will read data in the string format. Okay. Both are exactly doing the same thing. You can go with one of the approach. So I have commented this. Right. So now we put this in try catch block. So sometimes what happens is, suppose in Excel cell, you don't have any data. It is an empty cell, but you are still forcefully trying to read this data. Okay. So for example, I have some data like this, X, Y, Z, and 1, 2, 3. And here I have ABC, some number. Okay, just observe this. I have data like this. And here this cell is empty, but here I have some number. And here I have some data, but here this is empty. So suppose I have some data like this, and you are reading the data from this table. So you will read XYZ 1, 2, 3, perfectly fine. You will read ABC 3, 4, 5, perfectly fine. Same toString method. If I trying to read data from this particular cell, because you will put for loop, right? To read all the cells and all the columns, you will normally put for loop. In that looping statement, along with other values, we are also trying to read data from the empty cells. Empty cells. It will not ignore. Our looping statement will not ignore. Just like other cells, it will also try to read data from the empty cells. So at the time of reading data from the empty cells, it will throw an exception, data not found exception. Okay. If data is not available in this particular cell, and still we are trying to read the data by using toString or by using format cell value, anything, it will throw some exception. But there are some chances are there, right? Sometimes if the data may be present, sometimes the data may not be present. Chances are there. So to avoid that particular exception, what you can put is you will take a string variable separately and either toString or formatter, whatever it is, you put that in the try block, because this particular statement will throw exception. At the time of reading the data from the cell, it will throw exception. When it will throw exception, if the data is not available in the cell, then it will throw exception. Okay, so now this part we will put in the try block. Suppose if it is throwing some exception in the catch block, I make data value is equal to empty. And there is a difference between null and these two double quotations. So if you don't have any value in this particular cell, that will be null, because there is no value. It is not even empty. It is a null, just null. Okay, now if you find any empty cell, then what I am doing, this will throw exception. If it find any empty cell, it will throw exception. Once it is thrown exception in the catch block, we make the data value is equal to empty. So if we have single quotations, it will not throw in exception. It will just return nothing, but it will not throw exception. Okay, but if I don't put this catch block, if you leave the cell empty like that, it will throw exception. So from the safe side, we put this statement in the try block. In the catch block, we make this data value empty, and finally we're returning it. So if cell is having some data, then the data will be captured and the data will be returned. If cell doesn't have any data, it will throw exception, catch block will handle. So the catch block will make the data value is equal to empty. So it will return nothing. Okay. So this is how we need to handle. So because there is a chance of not having the value in the cells, sometimes if any values got missing in the cells, we should not have any exception for that. So that is the reason we put this in the try catch. Okay. So ultimately this particular method get the cell data. This method will return the data from the cell. But what are the parameters we have to pass? Excel file path, sheet name, row number, cell number. So 4 parameters we need to pass. Then it will return the data which is there in the cells. Okay. Now, if you want to read data from multiple cells, this will read data from only one single cell, because we are passing the cell number along with the row number. In that particular cell number, whatever data is present, which will be returned. So if you want to get data from multiple cells, then we will call this method multiple times inside the looping statement. Inside the loop, we will call this method multiple times. Okay, by passing different row numbers, different cell numbers. So accordingly, it will return the data from multiple cells. Now another method, set cell data. Set cell data. And this particular method will be used for writing the data into the cell. So whenever you want to write something into the cell, we just call this method. So Excel file path we need to pass, name of the sheet, row number, call number or cell number, and what data you want to write in the cell. That is a data you have to pass. So why in any user-defined method workbook not used as a parameter? Workbook is not needed. We are already doing the workbook actually. See, Excel file we are getting. From the Excel file, we are getting the workbook. See here, we are already getting the new workbook. File and workbook is not two separate entities. Okay, you can combine both as single. Workbook is not a separate entity. Along with the file, workbook will be created. So we no need to pass a workbook as a separate entity, because workbook we cannot separate from the file. So once we get a file, we can extract the workbook from the file, then extract the sheet from the workbook, then extract the row from the sheet. So file, workbook, sheet, row, and cell. This is a hierarchy. Okay. So we no need to pass any workbook separately. So file contains a workbook internally. So we can extract the workbook from every file. All right. Now come back. So cell data. So this particular method will write data into the cell. And what are the parameters we need to pass? Excel file, sheet name, row number, column number or cell number, and data. What data we want to write in the Excel particular cell. We need to pass the data also. So this piece of code will do that. So, and again, one more thing. So here we are writing the data into the cell, right? Set cell data means we are writing the data into the cell. But here we have done in different way. So normally if we want to write data into the cell, which class we will use? File output stream, right? We open the file in the file output stream, then we will write data into the particular Excel cell. But what exactly we are doing it here is we are using file input stream, and we are opening the workbook, getting the sheet, getting the row. And why we are doing this? First, we are opening the Excel sheet, right? File, opening the sheet, opening the workbook, getting the sheet, getting the row. And inside this particular row, we are creating the cell, then setting the cell value. And once it is done, again we are opening entire file in the writing mode, then we are writing it. So basically what exactly we are doing is we are doing the combination of reading and writing. Both we are doing parallelly. So if you want to write data, then we need only file output stream is enough. If we want to read the data, we need only file input stream is enough. But in this particular method, we are doing both. From the same sheet, we are reading the data and we are writing the data. Why it is needed? Because in the data-driven testing, you have some data, some columns, and in the last column, sometimes it will be empty. Because in the last column, we have to update the results after execution is completed. That means we will read the data from the same sheet. Also, we'll write the data into the same sheet parallelly. Okay, in that case, we have to open the sheet, read the data, and results we can write back into the same Excel sheet. So reading and writing, we do both in the same Excel sheet parallelly. So for that reason, this method is got created. So when you call the set cell data method, when I pass these parameters, it can write data into the cell. So this particular piece of code will do that. So if I look at here, we opening the file here, but we created a new cell, updated the value, and all the changes, again, we'll write back into the same Excel sheet. Whatever data we read here, workbook sheet and everything, along with this, the new cell data which we are updated, right? That also combinedly we are updating in the same workbook. And finally, we are closing the workbook, closing the file out input stream, and closing the output stream. Okay, we are just creating only the cell. Okay, we are opening the workbook, opening the sheet, getting the row, everything. But we are just creating a new cell in this particular row, whichever row we got it from the parameter. In the same row, we are creating a new cell, updating the cell value and uploading into the workbook. But rest of them, we are not going to change. But the still data should be present. That is the reason we do input stream here, combination of input stream and output stream. So here we are not creating any new row. New row we are not creating. So in the existing row, we are creating a new cell. We are taking existing row. Let me show you an example. So for example, let's say you have data like this. Suppose username, password, and result. Okay, suppose I have some data like this. This is my test data. And here, when you pass username X and Y as a password, here result I should update through my test case. And here, let's say A and B. Okay, some 1, 2, 3, and 3, 4. Some data is here like this. So in the same Excel sheet, we will read this data and pass it in your application. Suppose let's take the first row data. Let's say X username, Y password I'm taking. That is reading the data and passing to the application, do validation, and I will write whether passed or failed in the third column. If it is a passed, I can write passed. If it is a failed, I can write failed. So what exactly we are doing in this Excel? We are reading the data from the same Excel sheet. At the same time, we are writing the data into the same Excel sheet. And if I look at here, go back to your method once again. So we are passing the Excel file, sheet, row number, column number, data, everything. We are opening the workbook file, opening the workbook, getting the sheet, getting the row number. So first we are getting the row number, right? So if I go back to the Excel, let's say I'm getting this row, particular row. This is a row I'm getting. In this particular row, currently this data is not available. So these cells are completely not available. Only data I'm reading. So in that particular row, I'm creating a new cell and updating the value. Means what? In the same particular row, this particular cell will be created. So this cell will be created and I'll update the value as a past. In the next iteration, I will take another row like this and read this data and do something, and result I will update here. In the next cell, I'll make it as a failed, like that. So we are reading the data from the same row and updating the result. When updating the result means what? These cells we have to create a newly cells we have to create. So that is the reason while reading the data, while reading the row, we are opening the file, getting the workbook, getting the sheet, getting the row. This is all reading purpose. Once you get a row, in that same row, we are creating a new cell because we want to update the result back into the same Excel file. And data we are updating. Data means either passed or failed. But this is the new stuff, right? So these are all existing stuff. But this cell creation, new data updating, this is the new stuff that we have to write back into the same Excel sheet. So now we open the file in the output mode or writing mode, then write the entire workbook in the file. So these are the steps. So no confusion, even if you're not understood this utility file, no problem at all. You have to know just how to use it, how to call the methods, what it will do. If you understand the functionality of every method, that is more than enough. But if you understand the code, that is more good. Okay. Set cell data. So this particular method will write data back into the Excel shell. Now these are the additional methods I have created. And fill green color. Sometimes if you update status as a past here, I can make this cell color as a green. I can apply green color. And suppose sometimes if this combination is got failed, I can update the status as a failed, and then I can make it as a red color cell. So to apply these styles, I have created two additional methods, fill green color, fill red color. So these methods are optional, but you can still use it. So will it repeat multiple without? No. These methods will not repeat multiple times unless we use them in the looping statement. No, this method we have to call. It will do job only once. But when I call these methods inside the looping statement, according to the loop condition, it will repeat multiple times. This will call multiple times. Okay, if you want to write multiple cells of data, you have to call this method multiple times using looping statement. Without looping statement, this cannot be repeated multiple times. Because if you call only one time, it will write only one set of data. If you call multiple times, then we can write multiple cells of data. So looping must be there. So without a loop, these methods will not be repeated multiple times, only one time. Okay, I got my point. Even get cell data also. When I pass cell number, row number, it will return the data from the single cell. But if you want to get the data from the multiple cells, we have to call this method multiple times using looping statement. Okay, all these methods are calling only once. If you want to call them multiple times, we have to call them in the looping statement. Right. So now this is the fill green color and this is the fill red color. And I just copy this particular code from their official documentation. And if you just go to the send the file name and sheet name, row number, cell number, again, this is opening the file in the reading mode and it will create some, there is a special class called style class here. You can see cell style class. In this particular class, there are some methods are available. Okay, if I look at here in this class, we have a methods are available in the workbook. We call create cell style. And again, this style, we have a method called set fill foreground color, set fill pattern. So these methods are default methods which are available. I'm just calling them. So I'm applying the green color here and foreground fill pattern and everything. So this is again same method. Here we put fill red color, but only changes. These are the two statements have changed. Here I put green color as a foreground color is a green, and here foreground color is a red, and rest of them is same. Okay, so these are the two more methods additional I created. These are optional, but if you have to have, you can keep it. So these are the few methods I've created. So fill green color, fill red color. So here we use something special class called style class. By using that class, we call certain methods, set fill foreground color, set fill pattern, and how to access the colors again by using some predefined class, indexed colors, which contains all the colors. If I just say dot, it will show you all the colors. Whichever color you want, you can just select it in uppercase character and get index. And based upon this index, it will apply the particular color. So this is just for formatting purpose I have added. If you want to use it, you can use it, or else you can ignore it. Okay, so this is the utility file which we created. And in every data-driven test case, every method is not needed. Okay, whenever you need, you can call that particular method, you can do your job. Every method is not needed for every test case. So sometimes we need row count and we don't need cell count sometimes. And sometimes we want to read data from the cells, but sometimes we don't write data into the cells. So depending on your requirement, you can use these methods. Okay, this is a Excel utility file. So this is a first step. We need to have this utility file, and this is a common, almost common for every automation projects. Okay, but once I started framework and project, I will slightly modify this, but more 99% of the code is exactly the same. Few changes are there, I'll do those changes. But for now, you can follow this utility file. Okay. Yes. So normally when you create a framework, we will follow the framework structure, right? We will follow the folder structure. So these kind of utility files, we will keep separately in a separate package. We will create a separate package or separate folder. We can call it as a utility files. In that particular folder or package, we will maintain all utility files. There are multiple utility files, not only Excel related. We can create another utility file, reading properties file, like that. So there are multiple utility files we will create in our projects. So all of them we will keep in a separate package. Okay, that we will see in the framework and project, not now. Just understand the concept. So once you start our framework concept, then you will understand how we can organize all these files. That is called framework actually. We will maintain the test cases in separate folders, separate packages, utility files, screenshots, reports, configuration files, test data files. There are many more files we can see in the framework. So we'll maintain all the files, we'll organize all the files in the different manner. That's called framework. Okay, that we will see later. So as of now, we will focus on this. This is a Excel utility file. So now what is our objective here is? So you don't need to remember any code, guys. Okay, especially utility files. But you have to know how to use that utility file in your automation. If you know that, that is fine. Okay, even if you no need to remember, because if you are able to understand the code, that is enough. So by seeing the code, you should be able to understand what exactly this input stream, why they have used, what is this XSO workbook, what is this get sheet. If you understand this code, that is enough. You don't need to write and you don't need to remember anything. Okay, just you need to have a level of understanding the code. That's the most important. Rather than writing the new code, initial level, you need to understand the code. Writing your code is the next level. Once you get some kind of experience, once you start working on the projects, once you get an experience from multiple projects, then you will able to create your own utility files. But as a beginner, as an initial level, you can use existing utility files and try to understand the code. That's the main expectation at the beginning stage. Okay, fine. So this is our utility file. So by using this utility file, we will also try to create a data-driven test case. Now let me create a data-driven test case. Data-driven testing. Okay. So when you're creating the data-driven test case, the first and most prerequisite is we need to understand the functionality. What is the test case? So what are the steps we need to do? That's what we need to first understand. Second step, we need to prepare test data. That is also most important. So this test data we need to prepare. This is the responsibility of the tester. And sometimes we can use some third-party tools. Sometimes we cannot use. We need to do our own calculations. Accordingly, we can prepare the test data. So we need to prepare the test data, and that we need to keep inside the in Excel file. And the third step, we need to develop automation script. Automation script. So these are the 3 steps. First, we need to understand the functionality of the test case. What are the steps we need to automate? Second thing, what kind of data we require, and we need to prepare the data in Excel sheet. Then third step, we need to start developing your automation code. Okay. Now let me show you how exactly the application. I'm taking one simple test case to perform the data-driven test case. So let me show you. I'll give you more assignments on this. So I'll just go through one example first. Right. So now I have this particular application. Let's say I have some small calculator, fixed deposit calculator. This is a small application. So fixed deposit calculator. And in this, there are multiple input boxes are there, multiple fields. Like we have to pass principal amount, rate of interest, period we have to select from the drop down, whether it's a days, months, or years. Then what type of interest it is, compounding, simple interest, what type of interest it is, we need to select. Okay, let me just do some one round of exercise. Let's say I'm passing some data, and rate of interest I can pass some data, and period, let's say 5. You can take days, months, and years. I'm taking years, and I'm taking simple interest. Say calculate. Now we got some maturity value. So this is the test case. What we need to do in the test case is we need to pass. Okay, just a moment. Yeah. So we need to pass some data. Once you click on the calculate, we will get some maturity value here. So what we need to validate in this is by using this data, whatever I'm passing, I should calculate my own simple interest value. Okay, and I'm expecting some value, right? That value should be equal to this maturity value. Okay, the simple interest based on the formula, we have to calculate our own. So we have one formula called PNR by 100, right? Principal into rate of interest into period divided by 100. So that will give you simple interest. So by using that formula, we will take some data, some dummy data, some numbers, different principal amounts, different rate of interest, different periods. In the periods, again, you can take days, months, year-wise calculation also you can do. And I'm taking for now simple interest. So you need to prepare some combinations of data by applying simple interest formula. Okay, so that's the second step. So this is the application which we need to automate, and the data we have to prepare. So let me show you the data, how it looks like. I've already created some data by doing the simple interest calculation. I'll show you that. Yeah. So you can look at this particular sheet. So I have different type of principal amounts. Rate of interest also have taken different. And periods. If I look at here in the period, there are 2 things. Here we need to pass the number. And here we can select either days, months, and years. And this drop-down value also I'm taking from the Excel sheet. Suppose in Excel sheet, I have something called years. Then in the drop-down box, we need to select years. And in Excel sheet, having suppose days here. Then from this drop-down, I have to select the dates. So this value also, we need to decide based upon the Excel value. So we have 2 columns I put inside the period. So one is the value we need to provide in the first input box. In the drop down, we have to select either years, months, or dates. So these 2 are belongs to period column. Now the next one is a frequency. So the frequency, again, there are multiple options are there. And as of now, I just calculated only simple interest for multiple values. So from this drop down, which value we have to select, that is also comes from the Excel sheet. So here I have taken all of them principal interest. Later you can put other type of values. So for now I have done this calculation only for simple interest. So if I take this particular data, according to my calculation, my maturity value is this one. Similarly, I have calculated my own maturity values for every combination of data. I have calculated this maturity value for every combination of data. And these are the maturity values I'm expecting. So if 2400 I getting here, then my test should pass. Because if I pass this particular data, if I get this maturity value, then I can say my test is passed. Similarly, I have taken one negative input. Suppose when I pass this particular data, and if I get maturity value this one, then my test is got failed. Okay, I have taken input invalid also, because when you pass invalid data, my test should fail. So in first four combination, my actual maturity value will compare with the expected maturity value. This is our actual maturity value, and this is our expected maturity value. So these values we will compare from the application value, maturity value. If both are same, then I will update the last column. So whatever results we are expecting here, the same results should be there in the result column like this. And this column should be updated through our automation, not manually. As of now, this column is empty. It don't have any values. So whatever we're expecting here, if I get the same thing, then I can complete my data-driven test. So we can take some valid data as well as some invalid data. Okay. So now let's see how we can automate the data-driven test. This is the test data we have to prepare first. According to your requirement, we need to prepare the test data. Fine. So now let us see how we can do the automation test case, data-driven test case by using this data. So I will use all these data combination with this. So what is data-driven test case means? We can execute the same test case with multiple sets of data, with positive, negative, right? All kinds of data. Similarly, just login. If you want to test login, we can perform data-driven testing on login because we can pass different combination of data. Valid user, valid password, valid user, invalid password, invalid user, valid password, blank username and blank password. Like that, we can test the same login with the different sets of data. So the data will be maintained in the Excel sheet. So that's basically called as a data-driven test. So now let us try to automate this test case. And Excel sheet is ready. And I will keep all the files in one folder. So let's go to the project. Instead of keeping the files in separately, I already created test data folder yesterday, right? So in the same test data folder, I will keep my test data file. caldata.xls. So when I open this, this is my Excel file. Right, close this. Now I'll open this, keep open for now because we want to refer this data. Right, so now utility files is also ready. Test data file is ready. We understood the test case and utility file is also ready. Now we are starting creating a data-driven test case. Yes, exactly. The data-driven test case, we should always cover positive and negative inputs. When I give positive input, my test case should pass. When I give negative input, my test case should fail. That's our expectation. So accordingly, we have to prepare the test data also. And if I look at here, first four combinations, I'm giving the positive input. So I'm expecting everything should be passed. In the last combination, I'm giving the invalid value, invalid maturity value. So I'm expecting my expected should be failed. So the result also we should get the same. First four should be passed and the last one should be failed. That's my expectation. Because when I pass negative input, my test should fail. The combination should fail. Then only I can say my test is passed. Okay. There's also negative condition which we need to cover. All positives and negative data also we need to cover as part of data-driven test case. Very, very important. Now, let's go back and start creating a data-driven test case. We already have Excel utility file, no problem. So now I'm going to create new test case. So I'll name it as FD calculator. Taking main method and say finish. Okay. So this is a step-by-step process. Listen very, very carefully. You need to focus a lot because we are going to do a lot of things. First step. So we need to deal with the application and we need to deal with the Excel file. So both we have to do. First, let us start with the application. So normally what you will do, you will create WebDriver instance and import this WebDriver. Okay, and then this is implicit weight and this is your application we are launching and then maximizing. So this is a common piece of code we have written. So now we have launched our application. Now we need to interact with these elements and this particular data we have to first capture from the Excel sheet and then we have to pass to the particular field. So let me tell you how exactly it will work. So if you know the process, it is very easy to implement. Okay. So now this is my Excel file, which contains a multiple rows of data and also multiple columns of data. This is my Excel. And this is my calculator. Here I have a principal amount and here rate of interest. Here we have a period and so on. So now in our automation, what you have to do is first we need to get the data from the first row. First row data we have to capture and pass this data in all the fields and do the validation. And once the validation is done, capture it and write the results back into the same Excel sheet in the last column. Once the process is done, next round, take another row data from Excel sheet. And once you get another row data, again pass the same data in another multiple fields and do the validation and update the results back into the Excel. This process we have to repeat multiple times, depends upon number of inputs in Excel sheet. If I have a 10 rows we have to read individually one by one. As soon as you read the data, we will pass it into all the fields and get the result and update the Excel sheet. And again, get another row and pass the data in the application, get the results, update the results back into the same Excel sheet in the same row. So this is the process we will continue. Okay. Now, so for that, we need to work with the Excel sheet first because we already have Excel file in the test data folder. So we will first capture the location of the Excel file. So to get the location of the Excel file, I'm creating one variable string file path equal to system dot get property of user.dir because this Excel file path we need to pass in every user defined method which is available in the utilities class, right? So this path is required. So get property of user.dir. So this will returns the current project location. In that in test data folder, we have a cal data.xls. So in this, we need test data folder concatenated and // test data folder. What is the name of the file? Cal data.xlsx. So this is a complete file path. So we are dynamically getting the project location. Inside this, we are going to test data folder. Inside this, cal data.xlsx. So this will return the complete path of the Excel that we are going to store in a variable. Why? Because in every method in the utilities, we need to pass a file path. As a first parameter is file path in every method. So for that reason, we are taking the file path. Okay. So this is my first step. Just a second. All right. So this is a first step. Now, once you get a file, We want to know how many rows are there in Excel sheet. That's the first thing, because we want to write a for loop to read the data from Excel sheet. But how many times we have to repeat our for loop depends upon the number of rows in Excel sheet. Now just observe the beauty of this utility file. We already created one method called getRowCount in Excel utils. So by calling this method, we can find number of rows in Excel sheet directly, right? So what I will do is I will take this particular class Excel utils dot get row count. Get a row count. I'm calling. And by passing two parameters, file path, I'm passing on that particular file in which sheet we need to pass a sheet name. So what is the sheet name here is sheet one. That we need to just pass sheet one. That's it. One single statement. We are just calling existing method from the Excel utils by passing the file name, path, and sheet number. So this will return number of rows in a Excel sheet that I'm going to store in a variable int rows. So this will throw some exception. Just add this. Done. So we find out number of rows. And we have only few columns. So we don't need to find number of columns here. Okay, we can still manage with one single for loop. We don't need to read all the columns. If you have 20 columns, 50 columns, 100 columns, then we can get the cell count and accordingly we have to write another for loop, otherwise not needed. So here we can manage with one single for loop. We don't need to get cell numbers. Okay, so number of rows I captured. Now the next thing is let us start reading the data from the Excel sheet. So let me close this. Now I'm creating a for loop. For, yeah. So from where we have to start in Excel sheet, row index will start from 0 only. But in the 0 row, we have a header part. So we don't need this header. So from where we have to start? 1. From 1 onwards, we have to start. So you can say starting value int I equal to 1. And how many times we have to repeat depends upon the number of rows and I plus plus. Here I is representing the row number. Okay. Now inside this, we have to do 3 important steps. First step, we have to read data from Excel. This is the first step. Second step, once you read the data, we'll pass above data into application. Okay, we need to pass that same data into the application. And the third step, we have to do validation. So these are the 3 steps which we have to do in the for loop itself. Because for every row, these 3 steps we will continue. These 3 steps we will repeat for every row in Excel sheet. So first we will try to read the data from the Excel. So how to read the data from Excel? So I is representing the first row. So how to read the data? So let us go back to the Excel. Now I want to read first row, principal, rate of interest, period, frequency, maturity, and expected. So expected is not needed. So at least this particular data we have to read. Okay, so now we will see how we can read this. First, we will capture the principal amount. See, first focus on this. All your questions will be clarified. So first we need to capture the data. So how to read data from Excel sheet? Using utility file, right? In the utility file, we have a method called get cell data, and we have to pass file path, sheet name, row number, and cell number. If you pass 4 parameters, that will get the cell data. So now I can say Excel utils dot get cell data, 4 parameters. First parameter is a file path. Second parameter is what? Sheet name. Third parameter is what? Row number. So here I is representing what? Row number. So that I am passing. And the next one is what? Cell number we have to pass. But which cell the principal amount is there? Which cell it is? First cell, right? It's the first cell or not? What is the cell number of this? Cell number. So even though it is starting from 1, but as per Java, we need to count from, even it is starting from 1, from Java, we need to count from 0. So index start from 0 here, as per Java. In the last class, we have seen. So what this will return? This will return principal amount. From which row? First row. So that I'm going to store in a variable. Prince, I'm creating one variable. And what is the type of this variable is? Obviously, it is a string variable. Okay, now you understood how to read the cell data from the Excel sheet. Currently, we are focusing on the only first row because I is representing row number. From the first row, we are getting the 0 cell value by calling get cell data method from the Excel utils. Now we got the principal amount. Similarly, we will repeat the same thing for rest of the cells, again from the same row. Okay, so what is the next one? Rate of interest. Row number is same, only cell number keeps changing. So rate of interest value, I want to capture. So what are the things we can change? So here I can create another variable, rate of interest. Okay, and Excel utils get cell data, same file path, same sheet name, same row number. Cell number is what? 1. So this will return the rate of interest. Now, what is the next one? Period. Again, in the period, there are 2 values are there. So first value we have to read. So that is a number. So next one is period. I can call it as a period 1, and another value I can call it as a period 2. So Excel utils get cell data, file path, sheet name, row number, and cell number is what? 2. And this will return the period value here. Now we need to get this one also. Years or months or days also we need to capture. So period 2, Excel utils get cell data, same file path, same sheet name, same row number, cell number is 3. So this will return period 2. The next one is what? Frequency column. So frequency column we have to capture. So let's make it as a FRE, frequency. And same file path, same sheet, same row number, and cell number is what? 4. Frequency also we captured. And we should also capture the expected maturity value, right? Because this value we need to compare with the actual maturity values. So these values we want to compare with our actual maturity value, which is displayed on the UI. Then only we can do validation. So this particular value also we need, but we are not passing these maturity value to the application, but still we can use this value for validation purpose. So maturity value also we need to capture. So here I'll create another variable. Okay, and this is my expected maturity value equal to same Excel utils get cell data, file path, sheet name, and row number is what? 5. Sorry, cell number is what? 5. And this will return the expected maturity value. Again, it is also in string format. This expected maturity value is also string format. So now if you observe, we focus on the first row. From the first row, we captured all the data from the Excel sheet. Only from the first row. Principal amount, rate of interest, period, period 2, frequency, and expected maturity value. And row number is exactly the same. Only the cell number is changing from the same. Okay, now you understood how to use utility methods, utility class methods in our automation. So we capture the data from the first row, only first row. Now, what is the next step? We read all the data from the Excel sheet. Now the second step will start. In the second step, we will pass the same data to the application. That means we need to identify those elements and we need to pass the data appropriately. So this is the data currently which is ready. Now we need to pass it in the particular fields. So let's try to inspect these elements. So principal amount inspecting this element. Go to selector hub. I'm taking this X path. This is representing the first field. Go back. And here I'm identifying the element driver.find element by.xpath. And this is our xpath. Inside this field, what is the value we have to pass? Principal amount. So dot send keys of principal amount. So this just a variable you need to pass. Yeah, that's it. So now whatever value we captured here from Excel sheet, we passed into the particular field. Same thing we have to repeat for rest of the fields. So the next field is rate of interest. And this is the XPath of the rate of interest. Driver.find element by dot XPath. And again, send keys. Here, the rate of interest value we have to pass. Everything in string format. We read the data in string format. Even application is also accepting data only in the string format. Remember. So other than string format, it will not accept anything. So rate of interest, even though it is a number, we need to pass as a string form. Now, so next one, period input box. So inspect this one. Tenure. Get this element. Driver.find element by dot XPath dot send keys. So this is the period one we have to pass here. Now the next element is a drop down. So period two, we have to select from the drop down. So what is the period two here? Simple in year, months, and dates. One of the value we have to select from the drop down. So this one. So let's inspect this drop down, and which is having selected tag. So we can handle by using select class. So get this drop down element. Right. So here, so how to handle this? First, we need to capture the element. Driver dot find element by dot XPath. And this is actual drop down element that we need to pass in the select class object. So I'm creating select. This is PREDRP period drop down equal to new select. And I'm not taking any additional variable for web element. I'm directly passing this entire web element inside the select class. So import this select. Now by using this by using this drop down, we can select the value from it. PER dot select by visible text. And which one we have to select? Whatever we get from Excel sheet, that is the same value which we have to select like this. So the same period two I'm passing here. You understood? So if it is a drop down, we have to do this. Now period drop down, we have already selected the value is simple interest. Now here we have selected as a years. Now this frequency value also we need to select. So let's inspect this element. Frequency. Capture this. Driver dot find element by dot XPath. And I'm not storing this into any other web element variable. I'm directly passing into select class object. Select. This is FREDRP, frequency dropdown. So new select, and I'm passing the element. And now in this dropdown, we have to select the value which is come from Excel sheet, frequency. So FREDRP dot select by visible text, and whatever frequency we capture from the Excel, that we have to pass. Yeah, perfect. So now whatever values we capture from Excel sheet from the first row, we have passed all the data in all the fields. Okay. Now what is the next thing? Once you pass everything, suppose I'm passing some data here. Okay, here's simple interest, and then click on the calculate button. So then once you click on the calculate, then validation will start. So after passing all the data, so the second step is completed. So now we need to do the validation. So before doing validation, we need to click on the calculate button. So how to click? Inspect this element, calculate. Okay, so this is giving, okay. So this is a XPath which is given. Let me take this. or else you can take the XPath till anchor tag. Okay, now I'm taking this driver dot find element by dot XPath dot click. So this will perform click action on the calculate button. So clicked on calculate, done. So first step, we read the data from Excel sheet from the first row and we pass the data into all the fields. Then click on the calculate. Now we need to do the validation. This is my more crucial point. So how to do the validation? So first thing, we have to capture this maturity value. How to capture this? When inspecting this, it will give you some XPath. So can we use this XPath to capture that value? Can we use it? No. Why? Because this XPath is got created by using the text value. This is not constant. Every time this value keeps changing, depends on the data. So we need to write our own XPath that will able to capture the value even though it is keeps changing. So how we can do that? We can create our own XPath. We need to capture actual. Fine. So if I look at this value is present inside the strong, right? This, and it doesn't have any attributes. So I will take the parent element, span element. So because span is having ID element, resp underscore maturity value, right? I am taking the parent element. From the parent element, I'll get the child element strong. I'll go to strong. So I can simply say // strong, specify the tag. That's it. So this is the XPath. This is the more dynamic. So tomorrow, if this value keeps changing, still this XPath is able to capture the value. Now we can locate this element by using XPath. But how can we capture the text? Which method we have to use? Get attribute of value or get text? Yes, get text method we have to use. Why? Because this is the inner text. Okay. So let's get that element. Driver dot find element by dot XPath dot get text. So this will return the actual maturity value from the application. So that I'm going to store in a string variable, string actual underscore m value. So I captured the actual maturity value. Yeah. So now what is the next step? We already captured expected maturity value from the Excel sheet. That is a value we need to compare with expected maturity value. Okay. So let's compare this. If our expected maturity value, right? And one more important thing. So here we are comparing the strings basically, but that is not accurate, right? So numbers we have to compare, not strings. So if I compare the strings, we will not get accurate value. So numbers we have to compare. Maturity values are the numbers. So currently expected maturity value is also string format. Actual maturity value is also in string format. Both are in string formats. Now, if both are string formats, we cannot compare those numbers. We need to convert them into numeric format, decimal format. Then we can compare it. Okay. So in if condition itself, what I can do is instead of doing like this, expected maturity value double equal to actual maturity value, I'm comparing. But before comparing, I will convert both of them into double format. So how to convert a string into double? What is the method? String to double. See, these maturity values most of the times in decimal formats. So integer we cannot take. For double we have to take. Okay. So here double dot parse double of expected maturity value. Here also same thing. First it will convert, then it will compare. So here I will pass expected maturity value. Here I will pass actual maturity value like this. So first they will convert into double format, then it will compare. Okay. So now if both are equal, then what we should say? I can say system.out.println test passed. And not only this, I want to do one more activity here. I will try to update the last cell value. Okay, if my test is passed, then in the result column, last cell, I will update it is a passed. So then how we can do that? In the same Excel utils, we have one method. What is that method? Dot set cell value, set cell data, set cell data. So file path. What is second parameter is a sheet number. Third parameter is a row number. Next parameter is a column number. So in which column the result is there? So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th column. Result one is a 7th column. So here I can pass 7. And what is the data you want to write in that? Just I say passed. That's it. So this is how we need to write results back into the same Excel cell. Not only this, I will update the color of the cell. I will update the color of the cell. How we can update? Take the same Excel utils dot. We already have one method called fill green color, right? Just call that method. And what are the parameters? Again, same number of parameters. So Excel file path, then sheet number, sheet name, row number, and column number. That's it. So this will fill green. So 3 activities. We just printed in the console window test passed. We updated the status in the last cell in the same Excel. Also, we apply the color on this. Suppose if both are not matched, then same thing we will repeat. But instead of test passed, I'll put failed. Here also instead of passed, I'll update the cell as a failed. Instead of fill green color, I call fill red color. Okay, we also have a red color. So this is a validation part. Okay, so once the validation is completed, then it will go back and get another row data, right? And repeat the same process for another row. So how many rows we have in the Excel sheet? Those many number of times it will read it, pass to the application, do the validation, and update the Excel sheet. But before going to take a next row of data, we have to clear the existing data because we already passed some data in the first round, calculated and captured the value, and validation is done. The next round of execution, the values still present in these elements. So we have to clear them. How to clear it? Just by pressing clear button. When I click on the clear, everything will be clear. Now inspect this clear element, clear button, and take the XPath of this and get it. And after completion of this validation and everything, here I will clear driver.find element by.xpath. This is a method. Basically, this is the button, clear button. So we need to click on that. So dot click. So this will click on clear button. That's it. And once the entire test is completed, so we will try to close the driver. Here, after completion of the looping, I can say driver dot close or driver dot quit. That's it. So this is the ending of the for loop. Ending of for loop. So this bracket is a closing bracket of the for loop. And this one is a closing bracket of the class, a closing bracket of the main method. This is the closing bracket of the class. So this is a data-driven test case. Now let us try to execute and see. And for every iteration, I will just put some wait statement so that we can clearly see whether this is properly entering data or not. Otherwise, it will go very faster. So before clearing, I will wait for some time here. Thread.sleep. Let's wait for 3 seconds are enough. It is not because of synchronization problem, because I want to see the data exactly it is providing or not. Yes. So this is overall test case. Let's execute and see. So before executing, just try to close your Excel so that at the runtime, it will open and read and writing. Everything will do parallelly. So better to close this Excel file. So currently the result column is empty, not having anything. So close this Excel. Now execute. So depends upon the number of rows in Excel sheet, our test case will repeat multiple times. Now you can see it is entering the first record. Done. Now the second record. Now the third record. Next one. Once it is entered all the data, finally, it will close automatically. Yes. See now 4 times we passed valid data, so it is passed. Last time we passed invalid, so it is got failed. Invalid in the sense I have given maturity value incorrectly. So that's the reason it is failed. Okay, now let us open Excel sheet and see whether it is updated or not. So refresh your test data folder once, because until unless you refresh, things will not be affected. So refresh and open caldata.xls file. Yes, now we can see whatever data we have expected here, same thing is updated by through automation. So this one and this one both should be matched. Here we are expecting fail, and here also it is got fail. So that is also our expectation. Okay. So if the Excel is already open, then what will happen is still it will work. But the problem is your Excel file will be locked by your automation. So after execution, if you want to open Excel file one more time, or if you want to update any data in Excel sheet, that is not allowed. Why? Because your automation is locked that your Excel file at the runtime. Until unless your automation is released that Excel file, you cannot do any operations on the Excel. So that is the reason, for the safe side, try to close your Excel file at the time of running. Okay. If you keep open this Excel file like this, it will lock your Excel file. Sometimes it may not work properly also. So that is a problem you may have. It will lock your Excel file. It will not release automatically. Okay. So that's the reason. So no need to close. You already opened this. So if you want to close this again, you can close it. After execution, you can open, no problem. So you already closed. If not, you can close it. See, that is a mandatory, that is a common process. So as soon as you are done everything from the Excel sheet, so this Excel file, we don't need to close in this. Why? Because we are doing everything through utility file, right? So Excel file opening, workbook opening, all these things are done by utility file. So in Excel utilities, it is all automatically closed here. You can see workbook is closed, file is got closed. In every method, workbook file is already closed. So we don't need to handle anything through automation. See, it's more simpler, right? So if you are using utility file, we can happily do the data-driven test case simple way like this. And if you don't have this utility file, we have to create all this code in our automation test script. It becomes very, very complex. Okay. So everybody's understood? Yes. Looping is very, very important. Without loop, we cannot repeat the steps, especially in the data-driven test case. So everybody's understood. Please confirm in the chat box once again. So this is the process of doing data-driven test case. So once we start our project, I will show you multiple data-driven test cases. So we'll see different cases. So we'll take different applications and different type of data we will prepare and show you. Fine. So based on this, I will give you an assignment later. You can try this. Now let's move on to the another concept. Sometimes in our automation frameworks, we will put some data in properties file. Just like in Excel file, we are reading the data from Excel file. Similarly, we also keep the data in the properties file. Properties is a different type of file. Suppose the file name is XYZ. The extension of the file will be .properties. So most of the times this file will be used to specify the configuration things like browser name, usernames, password, Okay, suppose if you want to run your automation, certain things we require. So those things we can keep in the properties file. So if you have some data in the properties file, that also we can read through our automation test. So now we'll see the next concept, reading properties file. Reading properties file. Most important topic in automation framework, I will use this concept. But before that, I'm just giving some basic idea. What is properties file and how we can specify the data in the properties file and how we can read it through our automation. We'll see that. So basically the property file is just like a text file. It seems very similar to the text file. And it doesn't follow any syntaxes of Java. It doesn't have any data types, single quotation, double quotations, nothing. Just like in the notepad, how we are using properties file also, we can do the same thing. We can use properties file also, use same way. So what I will do is in the test data folder, I will create a simple properties file. So how we can create a new file? Just take the new file and give some name. I say config.properties. So config is just the name of the file. Dot properties is an extension of the file. So click on finish. It is not a text file, but it seems similar to text file. Now, when I open config.properties file, this is currently empty file, it not having anything. So now what I will do is I will add some data in this property file. I will add some data in the config.properties file. So for example, what kind of data we will maintain in the properties file? Some common data which is required for our automation, like application URLs, okay, login email, login password, like customer IDs, order information. So some common data which is required for multiple test cases, we will maintain in the properties file. So for now, I'll just add some data in this particular property file. So you don't follow any syntaxes here because this property file is not a Java file. Just like normal, how we can use Notepad, we can use like this app URL equal to some value. This is the value. And don't put double quote, single quote, nothing. No syntaxes are applicable. So email equal to some email, password, some password, order ID, customer ID. Like this, you can put whatever data you want in the properties file. Simply you can write data like this. And make sure when you're writing data in this, you should have a key and a value. Okay, key and value should be there. And app URL is a key. This is a value. Email is a key. abc@gmail is a value. Like this, whenever you put some data in the properties file, always make sure the data should be in the key and value format. Key equal to value. And no double quotations, no semicolons, no single quotations, no data types, nothing. Because this is not a Java file. It is just a properties file. So this is how we can specify the data in the properties file. Now, how we can read this data through our automation. Suppose I want to capture this URL from the properties file. I want to get email and password from the properties file. I want to get order ID, customer ID from the properties file. How we can do that? Let me show you. So go back to your package, create a new class, reading properties file. Reading properties file. I'm taking main method and say finish. Okay, listen very carefully. This is a step-by-step process. So why we need this properties file? I'll show you practically. First of all, let's see how we can read the data from the properties file. I'll put both of them side by side. Okay, now this is the data currently we have in the properties file. I want to read it and then print in my console window. Okay, so for that, we have a special class and special methods are there. So first thing, step number one is we need to create an object for properties class. A special class is there, which is called properties class. Properties obj equal to new properties. First, we need to create an object for properties class. And this properties class we need to import from java.util. This is not related to Selenium automation. All classes methods are available in Java itself. Okay, now we need to create one object, properties class object. Next one, second step is we need to open this file for reading the data. So whenever you want to open the file in the reading mode, which class we have to use? File input stream, right? That will work for all kinds of file, PDF, notepads, properties, Excel sheet, everywhere. So whenever you want to read data from the file, we always use file input stream class. So here I'm creating something called file input stream. Okay, and file equal to new file input stream of, here we need to pass the location of the properties file. So location of the properties file. So I'm dynamically getting the location, system.get property of user.dir concatenated. The folder name is what? Test data / config.properties. This is the file. Okay. So now we need to import this file input stream. So we open the file in the reading mode. Now we need to load the properties file by using this properties object. Take this properties object. Before getting the data from the file, we need to load the file. How we can load? Take the properties object dot. There is a method called load. And this load will accept the file. Whatever file we open, that we need to pass. And this particular command will load properties file. Okay. So in the first step, we need to create an object of properties file. And the second step, we specify the location of the file using file input stream. And the third step, we need to load the properties file using this particular object. Okay. Or else you can put this here also, no problem, like this. So first we get the location of the properties file, or we load it, we open the file in the reading mode, and we create an object of properties class, and then we have to pass the file in the load method. So this particular step will load in the sense at the runtime, before reading the data, it will load. Just like the load, it doesn't have a specific meaning. Load itself is load, because unless it loaded at the runtime, we cannot get the data from the file. It is there somewhere, but we need to load the file. That's the meaning of load. So read what this load method will do. It reads a property list. What is this load will do? It will try to read the properties list from the file. So once it is loaded, then we will start reading the data from the file. So reading data from properties file. So at the time of reading the data, we can read many things. For example, let's say I have the property file. So now I want to read this URL of app URL. So I want to get this value. What is this value associated with app URL? So I want to get this. So how to get this? We have to take the properties object dot. There is a method called get property. Okay, properties object dot get property of. In this, in the double quotes, we have to specify the key app URL I want to capture. That you can specify. So this will return the value of app URL. So that we are going to store in a string variable. String, I can say URL, like this. And similarly, I can also capture data of all other variables. 3, 4, 5 are there. 3, 4, 5. So first one is URL. Second one is email. Third one is password. Next one is order ID, and then customer ID. So app URL is the first parameter. Second parameter is email. Third parameter, exactly we have to specify. And we need to specify password. This is a password element. Then order ID. And then customer ID. So like this, we can capture the data from the properties file by using get property method. So this method is available in the properties.obj. Okay. So now once we get a data from the config.properties file, we can print them. So I can say system.println URL, email, password, ORID, and customer ID. So I can just print them by giving some space. Email, then again concatenate with some space, password, concatenate with some space, order ID, and then concatenate with some space, and then customer ID. Right? So like this, you can print the data. So let's try to execute and see whether we are getting all the values or not. So you can close properties file. Now execute. Yes. See, now we got it in. This is the URL, this is the email address, this is the password, and rest of the data we got. So we can read the data from the properties file. So normally what kind of data we put in the properties file is whichever data is commonly required for multiple test cases. For example, you have 10 test cases for your application. In all 10 test cases, you need to open application URL, right? So I'll give you a real scenario so that you can understand the importance of the properties file. Observe. So let us say I have multiple test cases, test case 1, test case 2, test case 3, and so on. Let's say you have 100 test cases. In every test case, I want to launch my application. I want to do login process. I need to enter username and I need to enter password. So application, launching application and login. These two steps are common in every test case. So normally what we will do in every test case, we will write the code, right? Driver.get app URL is specify. Driver and also username and password data also will specify. Again, another test case, again, driver.get app URL and username and password. In every test case, you will hard code these data. You will hard code this data in every test case. What is the problem when you hard coding this data in every test case? Let us say you have 100 test cases. In all 100 test cases, you specify the application URLs and you specify the email IDs and passwords. Suppose tomorrow, if any changes happen, suppose application URL is got changed or username and or email ID password is got changed, then what you need to do now? You need to go to each and every test case and you need to do modify. You have to do modification of URLs in every test case. You have to do email and password also. You need to modify in every test case. This is very, very tedious task. So to avoid this, what we can do, we will just create a separate file and whatever things are commonly available in all the test cases, we will consolidate the data, we'll keep in the properties file. You app URL, username, password, order ID, customer, and whatever is commonly find, you can find in the test cases, you put that property file. And then in every test case, you will refer the same file. And suppose tomorrow some changes happen. You no need to change the test cases. Suppose app URL is got changed. So you can you can do change only in one place. Suppose email password is got changed. Just change them only in the properties file. No need to change in every place. So this is the advantage of using properties file. Understood, everyone? So why we need this properties file? To specify the common data which is required for all the test cases. Which is required for all the test cases. So locators also we can specify, but normally we don't specify locators in the properties file. We will go with the page object model process. So page object model pattern. So where we will create a separate classes in which we will maintain the locators. Okay, that we will see later. So this is all about properties file. What is a properties file? What is an importance of it? How to specify the data in the properties file and how to read data from the properties file. Now I'll show you some more options which are available. So let's see, we already open the file, loaded the file and read the data from the properties file and put it. Suppose from the properties file, I want to capture. So from the properties file, I want to capture only keys. Like what are the keys are available in my properties file? I want to capture only keys from the properties file. I don't need values. I need only keys from the properties file. So then how we can capture? So reading all the keys from properties file. Reading all the keys from the properties file, only keys. So then what you can do is, it's very simple. We'll take the properties class object. Everything we should handle only through properties class object. So properties class object dot. There are two approaches are there to capture all the keys. One approach is we have a method called string property names. Properties object dot string property names. So what this method will do is this method will collect all the keys and return in the string format. Okay, return in the string format. And basically it will return set collection. Okay, because why it is set collection? Because the properties file should not have duplicate keys. Property same app URL, I cannot repeat one more time. So it is returning set collection. So string property names will return always set of string, because these all keys are strings and is returning multiple strings. So obviously the return type is what? Set of string. Set of string. Like this. And the variable type is what? I can say keys. Okay, so this will return only keys from the properties file and import the set collection. Okay, so if you just want to print this, you can simply say system.out.println. I can print keys. Or you can use a looping statement also if you want to print. See, now we got all the keys. And if you want to print them individually, you can write a enhanced for loop and then you can print all the keys. So this is how we can capture the keys. And there is another way to capture the keys. So that is, we can take the properties object dot. There is a method called key set. Key set is a method, and this will also return all the keys in the form of set collection. But return type here is object, set of object. So here I can see you set, but here the type is object. So that's how the key set method is written. Why? Because the values can be anything, not only string, not only numbers, it can be anything. So set of object, you can say keys. So this is the first approach and this is the second approach. So then you can also print keys from the properties file. So can execute. Yes, now we got a same thing. So these are the two approaches which we have to capture only keys from the configure properties file. Similarly, we can also capture only values, all the values in a set, not like this. Here we have extracted values individually, whichever variable value we want to extract, we specify the key and accordingly we got the value. But this time I want to capture only values without passing any keys. Then reading all the values from properties file. Very simple. I can take properties object dot values. Values, that's it. So this values method will return all the values in the form of I'm creating one variable called values. And the type of this variable is what? Collection. If you don't know the return type, you can put the cursor here and it will show you the return type. Collection of object. This is the return type. So you can say collection of object. So this is the return type of values. Now import this collection from java.util. Okay, if you want to just print it, you can print and say system.out.println values. So this will print only values from the properties. See, so these are all keys and these are all values. So the basic operations. So most of the times we do this one actually. So the keys and data will be there and whichever value we want, we will pass that particular key. It will return the value. Okay. So these are we should not compare with hash map because hash map is having more methods than properties file. Hash map, we can do a lot of activities, but this is not hash map. But you can find few similarities, but not exactly hash map. Okay. So once you've done all the job from the properties file, you can close your properties file. You can say file dot close because we already open input stream, right? Whenever you open input stream, we have to close it after completion. So this is how we can work with the properties file. Very, very useful concept in our automation. So do just one round of practice and make sure the properties file is not a text file and it don't follow any syntaxes like semicolon. We no need to put at the end of the statement, and strings we no need to keep in the double quotes, and we should not specify the data types. Nothing. It's just a plain text. Okay. So just do one round of practice of properties file, and we will again discuss this once you start our framework concept. Okay. So now let me give you one assignment on data-driven testing today's session. Let's go to this particular page. I will provide you the data also. You no need to create. Only thing is you need to create a test case. Okay. So this is the assignment on data-driven testing. So open this URL. And once you open this URL, you will find another type of calculator. Let me show you. And this is something new. You will learn something new. Let me copy this properly. No. Properties file is different. Excel is different. Yeah, both are utility files. Different type of utility files. What happens? So not reachable. Can you guys try to launch this URL? Oh, sorry. Just a second. Okay. So this is the application URL. Okay. Now in this, okay. So as soon as you open the application URL, so few things are new here. You can try that. By default, some populated values are there. Some values are pre-populated. You can see initial deposit amount, length of CD months, interest rate, compound monthly, or so you can see some default values here. So now what you need to do is you need to first clear this data and read the same data from Excel sheet. And once you provided this data, as soon as you provided something, let's say whichever interest you want, you can take it from the Excel sheet again, interest, length, and initial amount. And this dollar and everything, you no need to deal anything with this. If I clear this, dollar still available. So you no need to deal anything with that, but you can pass some data like this. And once you click on let's the run numbers button, you will see some values here. So whatever data you're passing here, accordingly, you can see some data. Your CD is worth. So this we need to calculate. So you need to capture this and need to validate. So let me show you the data also. Just a second. So utility file is also I will share. So you have to use the utility file. Yeah. So this is the file, test data file. I will share this. You guys can use it. So this is exact data is there. So whatever the fields are there in your application, you can find exact data. So here, so this is initial deposit amounts, and this is interest rate. That means the third column. Actually, the columns are jumbled. You can carefully check it. So the first column data you have to pass in the first field. second column data should be passed in the third field. Okay, or else I can insert another column here. And this should be here. Okay, so there is no confusion. Okay, so now the first column data we have to pass in initial deposit amount. Second column data should pass in the second field. This is the interest rate we have to pass in the third field. And here, this is a value we have to select from this drop down. And once you passed, you will get a total expected. This is our expected data. And where we can see that once you click on the let's numbers, you can see this actually. This is the data you want to compare. And this data I have given along with the dollar sign. So you don't need to convert that into number format. So directly you can compare. Or else you can remove the dollar sign here and also here. And then you can compare. After removing the dollar sign, you can compare. Or you can directly compare, no problem. And this is our expected result. And the same result should be populated in the last column. Same result should be populated in the last column. It is exactly same as our previous example, but few new things you will learn in this example. Okay, so you can try this. You will face a few challenges. I will also share the solution, test data file, utility file, everything. So accordingly, you guys can try this. So this is a data-driven test. Okay, so that's all. We'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow's session.